So did anybody here come to David Cease's talk from Northern Light about long document GAI? No? Okay, well I used to work for David. In fact, that was one of my first startup companies, and some of the code that a few of us wrote is still in production there. And I'm very proud to say that durable code is good code. Although, as things are changing so quickly, some of that code is going to have to go away, but I'm happy to see Northern Light is still out there doing incredible indexing and search. So, before I tell you, go into this presentation, I want to tell you at a high level what I'm going to talk about. The first thing is, there's a lot of GAI. GAI, GAI, GAI. Walk around and hear that word 50 times, I'm sure. But this is the beginning of this story. We're actually going to hear about all kinds of new GAIs over the course of the next few years. Incredible AIs, like the likes of which no one has seen, trained on content sets that are not commonly available. But maybe the most important thing is this. There's one thing you walk away from this presentation with. If you want to use AI to improve your business, to drive your business metrics, whatever outcomes you're looking for, you're going to have to get some access to your data. So it does feel a little bit like we live in this incredibly chaotic time. Every day there's a wild new headline, and if we don't look at this headline and adopt this new technology, we're going to be out of business. I don't know. I've seen a lot of headlines come and go, and what I can say for sure is the key to success with generative AI is data. And this is a good place to talk about it, right? We're at the Data Summit, so here's the thing. Probably all of us in this room, we may be more knowledgeable about AI and search and all the other technologies that go into the things we confuse with science fiction now. The truth is, a lot of the challenge is about data literacy and democratization. That's a huge part of the challenge in the enterprise, is that most people don't really get to work with interesting data. They're fed a steady diet of reports and dashboards, and these things may or may not really be the thing that they need to analyze to change the dynamics of their position or for their company. Most business leaders believe that making access to data and analytics is a good idea, but they also agree most of their companies are not there. Anybody want to put their hand up and say, my company is amazing at giving us all access to data and analytics? Well, I can keep my hand up because there's not that many of us, right? We are not hundreds, we're not thousands worldwide. We don't have hundreds of silos, but when you do, the problem gets a lot harder. And I think this is the thing. Data literacy, it ultimately is going to let people lead their companies to success through this complexity, the so-called digital wilderness. And democratizing the data means everybody can bring their unique experience, their diverse background, to help solve the organizational quest for knowledge and for action, right? Informed action. What do people really want out of AI? What does the large enterprise want out of AI? Anybody want to venture a guess? Anybody heard anything? Anybody else speak on this topic? What are they looking for? My theory is that they're looking for efficient experts who make incredible, well-informed decisions following the guidelines that they have. But we know that it's a pyramid. It's a pyramid. There are very few people with access to the most excellent information, the most refined information, not data, information. They are decision makers. They are potentially the most data literate people in the organization. And they're a small group supported by a large wedge of people who are also very good at data experts. They are involved in putting the data together, producing the reports, the analytics, creating and using the models, and the rest of the organization, the consumers, that's where the opportunity lies. That's what AI is about. Speeding up the time and making it for the folks at the top, and making it available in a self-service model to the rest of the organization. The truth is that the goal, when companies think about deploying AI, they want to make everybody better and more able to access the information they need to excel at their jobs. That's what it comes down to. And this is a very challenging thing to do in the organization, right? Partly it's, we think about the world of the large enterprise. Let's think about that. In fact, I would point out that last March 14th, Pi Day, that was the 1-year anniversary of GPT-4. Here's what I've learned in the last year, going out there with SWIRL and solving these kinds of problems. How do we deploy AI? How do we do it in the enterprise? Here's a reality check. In the large enterprise, not the small and medium enterprise, the large enterprise, they blocked most generative AIs. Some particularly aggressive investment banks sent out memos saying, if you copy and paste one of our internal reports into ChatGPT and we find out about it, you won't work in the industry again. That's hard. Another thing they did is the large enterprise doesn't work with software quite the way the small and medium enterprise does. Not the way we do. They've got very used to building their own software. Because when you're a giant bank, there probably isn't something you can just take off the shelf. If you're a huge pharma company, you may very well have built all of your R&D or adverse exception handling background, right? That's part of your core value proposition. But they do like these things, right? They want them in their own environment. So the large enterprise deployed a ton of GAIs and LLMs from numerous companies, right? They tried the upstarts, they tried the inventors, they tried some of the people who've capitalized on it the most. But there's a problem. And that problem in the large enterprise is, much like the database, the first generation of AI architecture for solutions is copy the data in. You will see this across every single vector database and many of the solutions out there that will answer your questions, right, with your data. The first step is put the data in. Now, again, in SME, small, medium enterprise, if you're a consultant, a freelancer, that's no big deal. Like, you've already done that, and you're getting value from it. You know how powerful it is. But it's trickier in large enterprise. We're going to talk about that. And as a result, those downloaded, installed AIs, they've been trained with safe data like annual reports, employee handbooks, but they're trapped in a bubble. They can't access the important data silos that actually have the answers to questions, or at least the data that can answer it. They're not able to do that because in that world, you have to open a ticket just to give someone access to something, right? Just say, oh, we want to onboard a new hire to a system like Colibra, right, which is a powerful system with lots of information about data sets and how you can use them and what they mean. To copy the data for a whole database from a department to some corporate-owned resource, it's going to require CDO sign-off, chief compliance officer sign-off, and depending on exactly what data it is, maybe a lot more. And to do bulk transfer, they can't do it. In the regulated world of financial services, life sciences, oil and gas, and government, especially Homeland Security, copy in is not really the best option. And part of the problem is that with those silos and defenses, this is the terrible effect on the user, right? They can't go to a single place. They spend all of their time going from silo to silo, back and forth, remembering how to search it, remembering what the results look like, downloading, saving, and organizing, and we don't have to go back to studies from 20 and 30 years ago, 50 years ago now, that show that that's what people spend time on. Far more time gathering and organizing information than they do actually using it in their analysis. And the truth is, in large enterprise, it's not one person, it's entire departments of people moving across all the different silos. There are a lot of applications in the enterprise today. The average, right, in something like engineering is over 70. This is large enterprise, not SME. In HR, where you have typically the smallest concentration of employees, you have a vast number of apps, and this has been increasing dramatically, got almost doubled the rate of acceleration in cloud, right? Because now it's so much easier to add. But there's a challenge with these applications now. There are so many of them every year. There are hundreds, thousands of new applications. Does anybody here work in a large enterprise where they have a program, a group that verifies it's okay to work with a SaaS company or a cloud platform like a security team, right? So keep your hand up if you know that that team has an 18-month waiting list. Keep it up if it has a 24-month waiting list. So that's the window, right? You need to get in front of them with your new SaaS product 18 months before they need it. I don't know how to do that. I think that's hard. The problem is much worse for new employees. I'm going to talk about now a case study. I'm going to go into detail a little bit, but a lot of who's joining the enterprise today are new entry-level folks coming in with some business analyst background, and they're dropping in to a situation where their predecessor probably didn't document everything that they needed and didn't have the time to do knowledge transfer. Amanda, as one example, has to quickly figure out how to create a weekly report. Like, that's what her initial success at her job is going to depend on, being able to find and summarize data. And it's no problem to find out what tools are available. There are many places that can explain that. The only question is which one's relevant? Where do you start? And as a new employee, that's really tricky. It takes time. So this is the result of a case study done in a large pharma. We're talking specifically about supply chain data. Supply chain data is very structured. It's very database-centric. It's also incredibly time-centric, right? People are always wondering what's happening next quarter, what happened last quarter, and of course, what are we doing about whatever happened last quarter, next quarter? You can see that the simple problem of silos, and this is a fraction, a subset of the actual silos that the real Amanda would have access to. You have to look at each one. You have to figure out if it's actually relevant, and only by doing that a bunch of times do you ultimately figure out, okay, this one will help me with this one has data about that, and you can quickly, right? Then you can become good at your job. How long this takes is an open question. This is not right. We live in the era of AI. How is it we have to copy all the data again, do a huge ETL project again, remodel all of our security again? It's because you can't do it. You don't have to. The key is to move to a real-time, connected AI architecture. No more copying all the data that might ever have an answer and putting it into some new repository. That isn't going to happen in the large enterprise. It's likely not even going to be that palatable in the medium enterprise. And if you're regulated, no, can't be done. If you think about real-time connected AI, it's totally different. For starters, since it's real-time and we're not moving the data, it becomes your one-stop search solution. It's totally disruptive to the data silo problem because all of a sudden now we're not bound by having to move the data. And it really does democratize the information. If you can create that single pane of glass, that one search box to find it all, it really changes the game for efficiency and productivity. It lets you take advantage of AI, as I'm going to explain, safely using your on-premises AI without copying all that data into it. And last, you're going to use your existing tech investments. The enterprise. The enterprise is awash today in all kinds of cool technologies. Anybody here use Google BigQuery? It's an amazing database. So they just added incredible vector capabilities, right? The people who invented or really popularized vector search, Google, has now built that into their database. Elastic has it, OpenSearch has it, Solr has it, you name it. They're all getting smarter. So why not take advantage of those systems now? The key is to bring your AI to the data and not the data to the AI. That's the key. How do you do that? What does it look like? Here's an example of the architecture we deployed at a very large pharma company to help change the game from ticket-based ad hoc requests for data that were taking a data science team a long time, and I'll talk more about that, to a self-service system. Real-time connected AI looks and feels very different. For starters, you can't have one user with access to all of the silos. They're going through the real-time connected single pane of glass, and this is where technologies like meta search combined with the reality of public published APIs and the ability to use new technology like reader LLMs to re-rank results and find the best so the user doesn't really have to spend much time at it. Then broker those queries, potentially adapting them for each source, since different sources speak different languages and take different inputs, getting back the results and presenting it all back to the user. And even being able to learn, right, and personalize that result. Because for starters, the single pane of glass should be acting as if it is the user. You should see only what you're authorized to see. That's very important. For starters, that means when I generate an AI insight from that single pane of glass, it's going to be personal to me. That's a very powerful feature of real-time architectures that are connected as opposed to copied. So let me tell you a little bit more about this. This is a large pharma company, as I mentioned. They have over 10,000 users globally. They are absolutely overwhelmed with reports and dashboards, but the truth is, nobody asks questions about those anymore, right? Those are the previous questions, the historical questions that have been answered. They spend a lot of time with new questions, right? Management typically sends those down in some form, and they have to be answered. Prior to deploying a real-time architecture, it would take up to 2 weeks to get an answer to a question. You would open a ticket, a data science team would respond, up to 10 people from all over the company might touch that, and ultimately you get an answer in the ticket. And you can ask for expedition if you need it, right? If you need it tomorrow. But the internal cost for this service is extraordinarily high. Now the thing is, almost every one of these inquiries starts with a question. If you have to decompose that question to, okay, that's this query against this source, and then I have to get this data and move it into another database, that's why it takes 10 days and 20 people. That's why. But this is the reality of business. Almost everything is posed as a question. And here's even worse, you don't know what type of output you're going to get that might need to answer this. For example, some answers are in content. If I want to get qualitative information about my customer service rating, I can ask that question, and sources that are content-based might give me the answer. They might give me links to the most relevant documents. Sometimes though, if I say, do I have enough of this? Am I in stock on this? Do I have enough forward-looking material? Here, it might be a data answer. This is a breakdown of customer service. Tell me about the regions. It's a graph, it's a data chart, but I still need this as part of my answer. If I'm writing that weekly summary, I better include this too, right? I can't just put the qual data. Very frequently, you need both. And in this case, the real-time architecture is looking across sources like ThoughtSpot, Snowflake, Snowflake's AI, which is actually responding in some cases, answering the implicit question using the underlying data tables. It's using Calibra, as mentioned, which is all about the governance of the data and catalog of the data. It's using Microsoft Teams, where there are actually all of the initial discussions about the questions take place, so there's tremendous historical data. There's also a lot of stuff in SharePoint. Everybody has SharePoint, right? There's always SharePoint. SharePoint is ubiquitous and has to be tapped. It's a place where knowledge sometimes goes to die if you don't connect to it. So they put these things together. They didn't have to move all the data. They didn't have to install a new database. They didn't have to spin up another table in an existing database. They do it all in real time. And when they have the pieces of the puzzle all lined up, whether that's a data set, it could be qualitative data, some content, it could be metrics, they can click the button and generate a real-time insight using their internal trained in a bubble AI. They can actually rag their internal data over to it in real time without, again, pre-copying it all, and get a summarized answer. And this is the answer. This and the chart are what you copy and paste into your weekly report. You don't have to go from silo to silo. You ask the questions and you get the answers. And the impact is highly quantifiable. If before you could maybe answer a question or two a week, now you can start answering questions every day. And it actually does make a huge difference even to a small company to be able to do that. So for example, I recently was asked how much cyber insurance we have for a hosted user. And I knew that moment I was the guilty party. I had purchased the policy and I dropped it in my OneDrive, as one does, and forgot all about it. I used SWIRL, that's our real-time AI Connect architecture, and SWIRL found it immediately. You can see 2 PDFs in my OneDrive. Didn't have to move the data, it found it using the Microsoft Graph APIs. And you know what, I didn't feel like reading each of these 12-page PDFs, so I clicked the button, it was fetched, the text was extracted from the PDFs, only the relevant portions of the text were sent out to my choice of AI, in which case I used OpenAI GPT-4, I admit, I'm spoiled. But it wrote this answer for me, which saved me probably 5 to 10 minutes. Because that is the benefit of a real-time AI architecture. It helps everybody. The board member, the advisor, the salesperson, the investor, the people out finding investment for the company if that's the stage you're at, the people looking at joint ventures. Everybody can benefit massively by having access to this data. That's the whole point of data democratization. That's the whole point of creating data literacy. But it's hard to be literate when you're going from app to app and you have to be an expert in these things. Real-time AI is the one thing that can actually change it, can actually put it together at the last minute, in the last mile. Find that single pane of glass, use that to generate your AI insights, and it's a game changer that pays dividends again and again. And not to put too fine a point on it, back to that case study, those 10,000 plus knowledge workers are no longer opening tickets. They're now using a self-service AI-powered system that is 100% internal. It's not in the cloud, we don't host it, it's software deployed in their infrastructure, and they don't have to move any data. And in fact, they're able to serve 10,000 people with a handful of servers. Because again, it's not being re-indexed, it's not being copied, we're just talking to the systems of record. So I know that was a lot to absorb, and I appreciate very much everybody's questions and questions. I'd love to answer them.